Welcome back to Close Up. A long list of candidates in the 1st Congressional District and more than enough issues to discuss right now. Sarah Chadzicki, a Democrat running in CD1, is our guest this morning on Close Up. Sarah, thanks for coming in.
Absolutely, Adam. Thanks for having me.
So when you were last here, we actually talked about the immigration issue at length. And I asked you if you were someone who was in favor of abolishing ICE. And at the time you said, no, this is an agency that should be monitored, but you didn't want to go as far as abolition. Has anything changed your mind, especially given recent events in Minneapolis?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I had given that response, it was that we really needed to see how this was going to be handled and monitored. And we've seen the evidence this week in the heartbreaking murder of a mother, Renee Nicole Good. And at this point, yes, absolutely, we need to abolish ICE. It is not acting in the best interest of the American people. And I will go a step further, Adam, in saying that it's not enough to abolish ICE. We actually need Congress to outlaw Gestapo tactics. And we're seeing that across the board in how ICE is operating within our communities. It's terrorizing our communities. It's not making them safer. It is instilling fear. It is creating a divide between local law enforcement and the community. And I stand by local law enforcement and their social contract to the communities they serve to uphold their oath to the Constitution for due process for all. That's incredibly important. So yes, we need to abolish ICE. We can't zero fund them given where the funding is at in the system, which is very frustrating. But what Congress can do right now is put legislation in place that specifically outlaws Gestapo tactics.
So what happens to all of these ICE agents then? Certainly there are some who you feel who should not continue. Do you think that there are any who are good and should stay?
This is an interesting question. Good and should stay. What ICE has been doing, none of it is good at this point. And we are seeing that. If ICE was going in and supporting, immigration courts and what immigration courts needed to have happen, great. That's not what is happening. So right now, they should be put on administrative leave. We should put legislation in place that outlaws Gestapo tactics. And then maybe we can repurpose where those individuals are to actually support good immigration reform.
And then who enforces the law then if they no longer exist?
If ICE doesn't exist, there is a whole Department of Homeland Security that still exists. And there are immigration courts that still exist. And there is partnering with local law enforcement, and that still exists to support real, true, legal immigration process.
And don't you just fall back into the trap, though? Part of what got Democrats unelected and helped them not win in 2024 was not enforcing things like immigration law to an extent that the public wanted, perhaps not as much as President Trump's doing. But how do you avoid falling into that trap again if you're going to get rid of all these people?
So when we were here last, Adam, we also spoke about immigration reform and legislation that had been on the table that this current administration actually pushed through Speaker Johnson to not put on the floor for a vote. We need to outlaw Gestapo tactics. We need to put real immigration reform in place that we haven't seen in 3 decades and be able to have a lawful, well-funded process for reform. Can you imagine if we put $170 billion into our immigration courts for real due process, real immigration process, people to work directly with immigrants at the border to process them appropriately, to stop the issue at the source? We would have such an incredible system of functional legal immigration. Instead, this administration has chosen to put our dollars into a paramilitary that is instilling fear, causing chaos, and is a method of oppression for the American people. That is not okay with me. We have now seen the proof.
Let's turn to Venezuela.
Yeah.
Do you support the president's action removing Nicolas Maduro from power?
No, and I want to be clear about this. Nicolas Maduro is a bad apple. Okay, this is very clear, and there are 2 very distinct conversations we need to have. One, Maduro is not a fair leader. And I support the Venezuelan people in their right to self-determination, in their right to a free and democratic government and society, 100%. Maduro was not on American soil. Maduro was on foreign soil. The U.S. has broken international law. That is a very dangerous precedent to set. especially when we're looking at someone like Vladimir Putin, who says, I can go into a sovereign nation. I can terrorize the people there. This is no problem. I'm very concerned about where we are as a nation and what we are allowing to be okay based on propaganda, based on messaging. Maduro is not a good, safe, democratic leader. We know this. The operation that was conducted by our government without congressional approval or even notice, the bombing of a foreign nation and the civilians that died in the process are a violation of international law. Now, if Maduro was on our soil, like Putin came to Alaska, if we invited Maduro over to Alaska and he was captured there, arrested there under a legal warrant, that's a different conversation. And so I'm very concerned about where we're at and what we're allowing to be permissible behavior, not only domestically, but internationally.
Let's return to the home front here. What's
Sure.
your plan to reduce energy prices for Granite Staters?
So in terms of, that is a whole shift, Adam, all right. I think, we can come down to affordability on so many levels, right? And in terms of energy consumption, we're a family of 5. We live in an old home here in New Hampshire. I understand energy costs and electric costs and heating costs. We actually just had a heating delivery before I came in. And what we're seeing here is that across the board, we have an affordability issue, right? Whether it is the rise in healthcare, the cost of living, the cost of housing, right? And so in terms of energy, we need a whole systems approach, just like we do with healthcare, just like we do with housing, to be able to make it a manageable cost for people to live. People should be warm. People should have electricity. These are basic fundamentals that we need in our society.
What sort of new supply projects would you support, though, to bring the cost down?
So I think we need to look at the system of what we're able to produce here in New Hampshire, and I've just begun those conversations with a variety of people in terms of what can we promote? What can we promote for new development? We obviously saw a huge loss of funding for, what we consider green energy, right? Renewable energy in this administration. That took away jobs from union workers. That took away opportunities for creative development, which is what we need right now. I mean, we're not going to take enough oil from Venezuela to lower our costs at the moment. Adam.
Are all options on the table, though? More natural gas, perhaps next-gen nuclear?
I think we need to look at the whole plan. I don't have a clear plan at this point because we've just started those conversations. And I think, one of the things about me is that I don't want a pie-in-the-sky plan. I don't want to just throw out an idea that could be great, but isn't necessarily fantastic, right? We want to work with people on the ground to make real change possible. And, Adam, as we wrap up here.
We've hit the time, man. Yes. Sarah, we appreciate the time. We'll see you out there on the campaign trail.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Adam.
All right. We'll be right back with the second inaugural address of Mayor Jay Rouet in Manchester. Stay with us.